session October 16th.
Oh, I think Jen's going to be gone, right? Jen's gone.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We only have 6. Where's Janice?
So I haven't heard of anybody else. It's Janice and Jen. Jen's going to be gone, I think. I heard.
Jen and Janice are gone.
Both of them. Okay. So everybody's sort of. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and start the council study session. And we do have a couple of
Madam Mayor,
citizens.
can you give the date?
This is October 16th, 2017.
Thank you.
Citizens comment on agenda items, so we'll start out. Since it's study session, we go ahead and have those at the beginning of the meeting. And I have a Dick Orcutt. Dick, would you come forward to the podium and make your comment, please?
Assuming you can hear me okay. Better? Thank you for letting me come on very short order. And the gentleman that had asked me to be here doesn't seem to have been able to make it yet. So I want to talk about the late entry to ideas on the Anderson Park primary baseball field, part of that project. Oh, I'm sorry, Dick Orcutt.
And your
10033 West 30th Avenue, Paramount Heights. I've lived there for 53 years this month. I was born in Lakewood and lived my entire life there before I got married and moved over to Wheat Ridge, the crosstown rivals. Christy's parents were friends of mine clear back in the school days, so I go here a long time. I love Wheat Ridge. I've been involved. This is probably where I'll die. My kids went to Wheat Ridge High School. I think the Anderson baseball field and my involvement with it is that I've had a love of baseball since I was 8 years old. I have coached baseball for the last 32 years at collegiate level. I was an assistant coach at Wheat Ridge High School in the 90s. I've had on a program that I run a large number of players that have come through it, many of which are now citizens and family people in Wheat Ridge. I had 28 players in my program that have played professional baseball as high as the major league level. That's all the material. What is important is that baseball fields are becoming archaic for the number of people that we have in our community and all across Denver. It's a great sport. It's a development. And I think that to take this park and destroy the baseball side of it, may be a mistake that we'll look back and wish we hadn't done as a city. As I recall, this park was purchased during the mayoralship of Hank Stites for the purpose of being a baseball park. It's suitable for play for 14-year-olds on up to and including adult baseball. It's a beautiful setting. It doesn't interfere or doesn't have to interfere with the other agendas that are there, the park, the soccer field, the picnic area. And the cost of that field, which I know has been in the study presented as being a very difficult thing to overcome, there are organizations like the U.S. AAA Baseball that I know would make an offer for the park, lock, stock, and barrel, to buy it and maintain everything about it. So I'm not sure all of that came into the study groups or was able to be brought out in some of the earlier meetings that have been held with the public. As recently as this weekend, there were high school teams from across the country that participated at Wheat Ridge High School and Anderson Park, showcased by college coaches coming to see those, and in a couple of cases, professional scouts observing them. Those are the only two parks that are conveniently situated here in Wheat Ridge, suitable for that type of activity. I don't think the park has to maintain lights, which is one of the things in the study that suggests it's a cost objective type thing. The park could stand on its own as a compatible part of the overview that you're looking at, with or without lights. But I will remind you that it's one of the few lighted parks in this part of the area, and they are fewer and farther between. So For what it's worth, I would like to hope that we could decide at this late date that we could bring a more compatible a bit of information with on a future meeting. I recognize that time is growing close and we're coming in maybe a little bit late on this in our posture, but I want to go on record as saying that I'm sure we could, on a council meeting, probably like you're so many times faced with, probably fill the rooms with people from Wheat Ridge that would give supportive material as to why this should be possibly reconsidered. And I'm not sure in the study group that, I mean, not the study group, but the research that you paid to have done with taxpayers' money from the bond issue, and that will be taxpayers' money that goes into this project. I'm not sure that they covered that part of it. So for what it's worth, that's what I want to get on the record, and I'd like to be advised of anything that we can do in the future to carry this further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orcutt. I failed to mention that we have two council members who are not here tonight. That's all. We have one more person who wanted to speak, which is Guy Namiach.
Guy Namiash, 3650 Ward Road, Wheat Ridge. Good evening. So I also happen to be on the Parks and Recs Commission, and just wanted to share some points about this project as we've done with Discovery Park, and we did with the Fruitdale Off-Leash Dog Park, and as of late we did with the Hopper Hollow Park. We saved the Big Bang actually for the Anderson Park. And that was really to go out and talk to the community. We have spent the last 4.5 months having community meetings, 3 full-blown out community meetings, personalized invitations to key park users. And we brought in the community to ask them what they wanted to see in the park. Everything from, we even had somebody ask for a cat park. I asked for a skating rink. I was shot down, but we asked them what they wanted to see, from the amphitheater to multi-use field. We asked the community what they wanted to see and what the park would look like, and we came back with different drawings and so forth. But we even created a special oversight committee. It was created to further honor our Wheat Ridge voters and for their approval and the support of the 2E initiative. So this has been going on for 4.5 months. That's it. Thanks for your support, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on to staff reports, other than our,
We'll go ahead and go straight to
okay,
Anderson Park.
let's go right on to Anderson Park then.
Well, thank you. As you know, we're here tonight to present the 2E bond project for Anderson Park and the preferred concept plan. A contract was awarded to MIG and BRS in March of 2017. And since that time, the consultants and staff have been working to complete a well-thought-out concept plan based on public input process. We've also completed quite a bit of due diligence related to the amenities in the park, where they're located, etc. And we did have focus groups, an open house, a pop-up event at our Performance in the Park, as well as a community meeting last Tuesday. So the handout that you have are the results of the input we received from the community meeting, as well as a letter that was handed to me at that meeting representing the input on the baseball field or lack of a baseball field in the concept plan. So as part of your presentation tonight, you'll also see a completion of a probable costs and location of the amenities, as well as redesign of the buildings. The direction we're looking for tonight is a consensus to move the preferred plan forward for formal adoption, and that currently is scheduled for next Monday, October 23rd at your regular meeting by resolution. Next steps if that is to occur, will be to move forward with contracts for the construction documents and then the bidding process. And our consultants will go over a schedule at the end of their presentation related to the project. So I'd like to introduce Paul Kuhn from MIG, Samantha Suter from MIG, and then Craig Bauk from BRS Architects. And I always like to say we're always pleased to work with Craig. He was the lead architect on our recreation center. So, okay, thank you.
Good evening. Paul Kuhn with MIG. We are the we hold the prime contract for this project, and we're landscape architects and park planners in this event or this project. And as Joyce mentioned, that Craig is responsible for the Anderson Building and Bathhouse design process part of this. We're thrilled to be here. It's the kind of the culmination of a 7.5-month process where we've all worked very hard, staff's worked very hard, the communities work very hard, and we think this plan really represents the desire for the community. As we say, we're holding the pencil for you folks, and we've just kind of recorded what we've heard. So I'll start out with a quick overview as far as what we'll cover tonight. We want to review the public outreach process and findings, and Sam will cover that in a second. I will then talk to you about the preferred concept plan for the park site itself, basically everything outside of the Anderson building, and we'll also get into the opinion of cost for that particular part of the project. And Craig will then talk about the Anderson building and bathhouse renovation and the approach for that and the cost associated with it, and he will finish with the implementation schedule. And then we open it up for questions, I believe, after that, Joyce. So with that, I'll have Sam talk about public outreach and give you an update on that.
Thanks, Paul. Again, I'm Samantha Suter with MIG. So the first step really in the public engagement process for the park renovation plan was the bond initiative. It was a voter-approved bond issue, and it was the first step in engaging the public on what they wanted to see. It was passed, and the city, in so doing, was committed to renovating the Anderson Pool and the Anderson Pool locker rooms and building, and then some amenities of the park. And then, as Joyce and Guy pointed out, the public outreach process really has gone on for the past 4.5 months. We kicked that off with a series of focus groups and an open house June 7th and 8th. The focus groups were organized by interest, so we had park users, pool and building users came to one focus group. We had residents and local business owners attend another one. We had special events organizers attend a focus group, and then we met with park staff, the maintenance staff, the park staff, and planners. We followed that those 2 days up with a public open house that we held in the Anderson building. And I'll go through that in more detail in a second. We also had a master plan advisory committee meet throughout the process. That was made up of city staff and citizens, and we engaged them in 2 key points along the process, and we used them as a sounding board as we developed concepts to make sure we were moving in the right direction. In August 2nd, we attended the Hot Tomatoes concert in Anderson Park, and we had a pop-up community workshop. We had 2 different stations there. I'll go into more details of that in a second as well. And then, as Paul and Joyce and Guy mentioned, we had our final community workshop last week, which you have the summary in front of you of what we heard there. And then also the past maybe month or 2, we've started hearing emails from the bike advocacy group submitting their support for what you'll see in the concepts later on. And then the city also, the park staff, had this robust public outreach notification campaign. They posted information on the city website, on Facebook, in the Anderson building itself, in the rec center itself, and then they sent out an email to their listserv of approximately 4,500 contacts on that listserv. So now to dive into more of these events and what we heard, we start with the focus groups, and we heard things like people really love the park. They love the open and natural feel that they currently see in the park. They love that it's a park within a park, is something we heard. Um, some of the special events organizers wanted it to be more festival friendly. They talked about circulation, getting a large amount of vehicles into and out of the site at one time is a challenge that they're currently experiencing. We heard from a lot of the soccer users. They would like a place to warm up before a soccer game. They would like another competitive sized field. It seems like they have a big demand, is what we heard with that group. And then in the open house, we had a number of stations. We had stations set up to go through the existing conditions of both the park and the building. We had an area set up just for people to give comments. And then we had what we were calling a park program station. So we were asking people, how do you want to use this park? And we had sheets like this. They were printed out on 11 by 17 and they were taped to, I think, 3 tables. And we had all these different concepts and we let people vote on their top 5 park uses that they wanted to see. And this is the ranking of what we heard. I'll highlight the top 10 or so users or uses. People wanted to see a large performance space. They said that that's one of their favorite ways to use the park currently. And they wanted a more formal way to engage with concerts. They also wanted to be able to touch the river. They wanted a small creek access so they could get down and really experience that treasured amenity. They also voted for a large creek access. We think this is probably out of scale for Anderson Park, but it was something people voted highly that they want to see. The bike skills was very popular. We threw this out. We threw out a lot of different ideas. Excuse me. Because we wanted to put a lot of options on the table to see what people liked. And this was something that rose with everyone's vote, and it was something that we weren't expecting. That was pretty interesting to see how people came out to support this concept. Again, at a medium-sized performance space, people said they really liked the look and feel. They liked how there were the pavers on the ground so people can get up and dance. And then as Guy mentioned, people were pretty excited about the ice skating rink. We ended up ruling this out due to budgetary constraints, but this was an amenity people were pretty excited to talk about and to think about. We heard a lot of support for expanded play, both universal access, so for children with disabilities, nature play, which is more natural elements that kids can climb on and kind of get dirty, education, environmental education and awareness, and then a zip line was something that rose to the top as well. And then people also wanted a more formal picnic shelter. They expressed a recognition that the current picnic shelters are old and need a little love, and so they said seeing a renovated picnic shelter would be pretty nice. And then people wanted to have more formal circulation pattern and path throughout the park. They said when you're at one side of the park, getting to the other doesn't feel intentional. You have to either walk through the field or you have to go around, and mothers with strollers or seniors want to have more of a formal path that can connect them from one element to the next. We also heard a desire for a large multi-use area. And this was something we talked to the focus groups about and staff as well, of having a space that could be programmed with a variety of uses was a strong desire that we heard throughout the process. So some of the written comments, like I said, we had these voting stations so people could rank what they want to see, and then we just opened it up for general comments. I won't read all of these, but some I wanted to highlight were that the bathrooms feel too far away. That was something that people expressed a lot of concern about throughout the process. And then as I mentioned, the festival users talked about the parking and the car circulation and how challenging that can be during a large influx of cars. And then the last comment I'll highlight is that people really love this park. They love that it feels really natural and open, and it's clearly a cherished amenity in the community. So we don't want to do anything so drastic that will change people's love for this park. Now to move on to the pop-up workshop. We had two stations. So we had one station at the picnic shelter where the Hot Tomato set up, and we had one station at the Anderson building itself. And within those two stations, we had, I guess those two different areas, we had 4 stations. So one showed the concepts for the Anderson building and the bathhouse, which Craig will go through in more detail. Another one had the Anderson Park concepts, which Paul will show the preferred concept that emerged out of that process. We had a station where people could prioritize additional park program elements, and then another station for people to provide general comments. So we had 3 concepts for the park, and people voted overwhelmingly for concept number 1. And the main difference between this concept and the 2 others that you'll see was this expanded play. So people expressed an interest in really wanting to see more play options. They wanted the playground to be larger than it currently is. The concept number 2 was the middle vote, and the primary difference between this concept is the bike skills area. Like we heard in the first community workshop, people really liked this bike skills idea. And then the third concept got the least amount of votes, and you can't really see it here, but this is the area with our multi-purpose field, and in this concept we overlaid the amphitheater on that multi-purpose field, and people didn't like that. They said separate that. We also heard that people wanted to, which leads me into this next board, where do you want to see the amphitheater? And what we heard is people really wanted to see it pretty much where it is already. This was a discovery for us throughout the process. We kept thinking we wanted to locate it somewhere around here, but when we were there and we experienced the Hot Tomatoes concert, we realized that it's very nice seeing music in the evening within the trees, and that's what people heard and what we heard and what people told us. So you can see this is the preferred location, and E was about 2/3 of the people voted for E. A was up here close to the road. People did not like that option. They thought that the noise could compete with the traffic. And we also asked, what do you want to see? If budget allows, because at this point in the process we started crunching numbers and we knew that the budget was going to be tight. So we asked people if there is room for the budget as we get into construction costs, what do you want to see? And about 21% of people said they wanted to see additional creek access. About 19% said they want to see more sidewalks and walking paths. And then you could see some of the other elements that people wanted to see: more picnic shelters, expanded play. And then again, we had comments which echoed what we heard throughout the process again, similar to what we heard early on, where the bathrooms, the circulation, and just making sure that what we have can be used more functionally and people have a strong sense of safety. So with that, I'll let Paul come back up and walk you through the preferred option.
So how does all of this work and input that we heard translate into a preferred plan, or what we're calling the preferred concept plan? And really it's based on everything that went before tonight, or before this last step, and starts with the bond promises, because obviously that's what the voters of Wheat Ridge set as the bar first and foremost. And once again, we'll repeat some of those. It needs to be festival friendly. The Anderson building renovation is key to that. Multi-use sports field in place of baseball, parking lot improvements and resurfacing, replacing old infrastructure, and then upgrading small and large picnic pavilions were the key things included in the bond issue initiative. So with that, there was a list of existing site features that we heard needed to be preserved or replaced, and we'll go through that in the plan itself, but you can see them all listed here. Each one of those was kept in place largely where they are, in some cases as they are. In other cases, for instance, the large picnic shelter, as you'll see, the existing picnic shelter is going to take a different form in the preferred plan. And of course, it was all based on the input that we received in the community outreach process that Sam outlined. And lastly, there are technical things that had to be resolved regarding infrastructure and floodplain. And so we didn't want to forget that, lose sight of that. Obviously, we have to stay within the requirements of those elements as we implement the park renovation plan. And hopefully you had a chance to look through this in your package that you received and could take time to look at the plan. As you can see, we've got all of the features called out by boxes, and the boxes are color coded, with white being the existing, purple being the uses or facilities improvements that are included in the current budget, and blue being things that we'd like to include if money allows. And then we had one last piece, which is an opportunity area for the bike skills area that you see here. Basically an area that's reserved for that use should it happen. So quick orientation, 44th Avenue is on the north side. Clear Creek comes in along the south part of the park and then comes up the west side. And we have the existing Parks and Forestry Administration building here and the parking lot associated with that. We have the Anderson building, bathhouse, and pool complex, and the parking lot associated with that in this area. We have the Parks and Forestry shops on the west edge, and the yard associated with that, the storage yard for all the equipment. We have the existing soccer field in this location. That basically has been left as is, as was the pool, no improvements for the pool. The restroom building in this location, once again, left as is, although because of the hail damage, we expect to see a new roof on that. The existing play area is here, and once again, that's left in place. From a circulation standpoint, we have the main north-south entry drive, generally left as is with a couple modifications I'll get to in a second. The south parking lot, again, left as is with some improvements for improving the accessible parking. The north parking lot is left in place, and the north turf area field is left for festivals if need be, and the basketball court. As far as the improvements that we will be incorporating into the preferred plan if it's adopted, one of the main ones is the multi-use field that you see here between the north parking lot and the south parking lot has been set where the baseball field is currently located. It would be we'll get into that. We have more detail of that later in this presentation, and we'll talk more about it. But that was by far the best location for that and the most cost-effective way of implementing that feature. We have the two creek access points that the community was excited about, and those would be crusher fine pass, soft surface pass would be provided to provide access. Again, a small cluster of boulders that people can actually get down and come in contact with the river, and we think those will be very popular facilities. The other major piece is the performance stage in this location, but it's not just a performance stage, it's a performance stage and group picnic shelter, and again, we'll show you more on that in the next couple slides. The audience viewing area is to the north of that facility, about where the concerts are currently held now and where the old picnic shelter is located. And the main reason the people love that location was the existence of the mature trees, provided shade during the summer months and really made it comfortable for concert goers. Another major element that's included in this plan is and they're a little harder to see, easier to see if you can actually go into the PowerPoint, is the construction of new paths along the west side of the entry drive, north-south entry drive to the Anderson building, and another path along the west side and south side of the multi-use field. And both of those would connect back to the Greenway Trail, thereby creating a couple of different lengths of walking path loops so people can really enjoy a walk through the park. And equally as important, there's now an accessible route, a paved path up to the restroom for all your major events and for the performance space. So those are the key features of the current plan. We are showing a picnic shelter and an enhanced play area here. Currently, that's a bit alternate. We'll cover that in a second. Those would be tacked onto or added to the existing play facility and something that the community was very desirous of. We have a second picnic shelter associated with the multi-use field, and we have additional walking paths that we would put in if we had the budget available and bids come in favorably. And last of all is the space reserved for the bike park. And once again, this plan was developed based on what we heard from the public outreach and bond promises. And it was a collaborative design process, digital design charrettes with staff where we, in the community, the master plan advisory group, where we actually had people direct us during the design. And of course, maintenance and operations was a critical feature and a critical aspect in everything we do. As Sam mentioned, that impacted the the choice of not including an ice rink or an ice trail in the process. So to highlight a couple of the key features in the plan, the renovations to the parking lots, both parking lots for the Parks and Forestry Administration Building and the bathhouse, both of those basically scraped, old asphalt removed, new road base put down where necessary, and new asphalt put in its place. And parking has been reconfigured, especially on the north side, to make it work better for the uses that we have on site right now. And one thing I didn't mention is we do have a couple of crossing points where we have pedestrian crossings that are highlighted, one down near the main restroom, a larger one, you'll see that on a plan, and this one on the north side, although we're thinking we might move it down to this location to better align with the access to the Anderson building. And one of the main things we've done is we've really improved access to parking. Right now, you can only get into the Anderson building parking lot in these two locations by punching in two access points to the administration building parking and improving the access off 44th. We think now the parking works better and will be much more functional during your peak use during the summer months and certainly during your special events. Also provided bus drop-off for large groups, and we've enhanced the drop-off area and the entryway into the Anderson building, and also to create an outdoor space for the Anderson building. And so that will allow parents to be able to pick up a child at the end of the day or at the end of the pool as it closes, and gives people a place to wait for that to happen. And that was one of the things that we heard often from the pool users. Lastly is the multi-use field. Well, second from last, we have the multi-use field, which is basically a tabletop natural grass surface that can be striped in any number of configurations. Right now, we see it primarily being used for practice, and we do a lot of park master planning for communities. And one thing we always hear is there's never enough green space for practice for sport groups. And so that is something that this would provide the community. It will not be lighted. This is in Longmont at Sandstone Ranch. We do not intend to light this facility for several reasons, including cost and being neighbor friendly. The other thing we'd like to address is the performance stage group picnic concept. And you have a new graphic that we've produced since we sent you the PowerPoint that you're seeing here. And that is a 3D model that we developed to show the idea of not only a performance stage like you see in this precedent image that's raised a couple of feet and has a place where a band could set up and have a concert, but it also has a couple of wings attached to it that would take up the use that's in the current group picnic shelter and put it in with this dual use facility. And what that does, it means that during the normal park function during the day and on weekends, you can have group picnics in this beautiful new building, and it becomes a great concert setting during your weekday concerts during the summer months. And of course, it all is oriented towards this lawn seating area. So our cost really covered, my notes here, I'm sorry, our costs cover all of the things you heard. Obviously, we have to start with the removal of the existing facilities. And thank you. Removal of the existing facilities, and we have to prepare the site for the new improvements. And all of that is included in the cost estimate. We've got the performance stage, pedestrian connectivity is improved, multi-use field, upgrade the infrastructure, including the irrigation main line for the park. The multi-use field would have a brand new irrigation system, so that would function effectively. And there's targeted upgrades for landscaping. Our cost also includes soft costs for unexpected things, and so the contingency is available during construction, both from cost estimating standpoint going forward and during construction. And of course, we had the bid alternates we described. And as of now, the park itself is at about 2.33 million, and that includes everything that we've described up to this point. And if money was available, we could pick any number, one of the three alternates. Obviously, we'd love to have the expanded play and picnic shelter. We're not sure we can fit that in, but certainly the maybe an expanded additional sidewalks and path area would be a possibility, or perhaps another picnic shelter. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Craig to talk about the Anderson building.
Hello, I'm Craig Bauck with Barker Rinker CCAT Architecture, and I'm going to walk you through the proposed changes for the Anderson building and the bathhouse. Now, when we began the project, we had really two objectives. First was to modernize, and the second was to optimize. So work with what we have and just make it better. So we basically broke this into three different buildings or three different projects. The way to think about it is the first is the bathhouse itself. That's the blue one. The second is the link, or what we call the link, between the bathhouse and the Anderson building. And finally, the Anderson building itself. Now, each of these buildings was built in a different era with a different construction methodology, and all of it is past its useful life, as you know. But what we discovered as we got into it is that the bones of the building are usable. We just have to go in and have a different approach for each one of these three buildings. And so that's what I'll walk you through. I'm going to start with the bathhouse itself. So what we decided to do here is we recognize that it's built like a bombshell, which is a good thing. All we have to do is gut the entire thing and start from the inside out. And so what you'll see is that the part that is black or dark gray here, those are all the pool mechanicals. We're not touching those. Those are already taken care of during the last renovation. What was left to us was basically the men's restroom, the women's restroom, and if you recall the existing building, you'll know that this middle section is where the guards check you in, and it's where all the guard and staff areas are. What we discovered when we talked to everybody about what they wanted within this part of the building was they wanted a new restrooms, they wanted them to be modern, they wanted to be ADA accessible, but also they wanted a couple of family cabana rooms like they have over at the Recreation Center for any number of reasons, a lot of having to do with access, and lots of different people use those kinds of buildings, those kinds of spaces, those family restrooms. And so what we did was we looked at the capacities, showers, toilets, lavatories, and that sort of thing. We looked into what the code requires that we have, and we brought it up to modern standards, and then we went a little bit further. So we actually found by reorganizing the spaces, we could increase the capacities of each of the men's and the women's, which was a good thing. The way they basically work is you've got a series of showers, one of them which is ADA accessible and can also work as a private changing area. We've got a series of toilets and urinals, or a series of toilets in the women's, and sinks. Now, the space in the middle, that's where the staff was. That's where we put the family cabanas. And we're able to get two all fully ADA accessible. In addition to that, we put in a new janitor's closet and a new electrical computer room for the facility. Now, the way this works is you've got a hallway now connecting to the pool outside, and each one of these has their own access, and each one is combined into a sort of a more user-friendly way to get in and out of from the pool into the locker rooms. So you might ask, well, what happened to the guards? Where did they go? Well, that is the one addition that we're proposing. Up here at the top, you'll see that we've added a little bit of square footage. That is going to be a new guard office and a little bit of storage. You can see that it's pushed out from the building a little bit. The point of that, and when you see the elevations you'll understand better, is that it's all glass on that end, and by pushing it out, they can see all of the pool complex and all of the area around that. The storage behind it allows them access to things like kickboards and different things that people want to check out when using the pool. So we worked with the pool staff to see if this would be optimized for them or would be a workable solution since it is a different location, and they're perfectly comfortable with it. So that takes care of what we're doing on the pool side of things. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute in terms of 3 dimensions. Let's move to the middle section, what we call the link. Right now, that is an unused space. It's wide open. It provides a ramp and a stair access because of different elevations down to the Anderson building, but otherwise it's unused. So one of the things that we felt we could do is we needed to have a new checkout station, or check-in, checkout station, since we took that space away from the middle of the building. So what we've done is we've put a reception desk in the middle of that space. We'll service that from the ceiling, so we won't have to dig the floors up to get power there and data. But in addition, we've added a more robust entrance system, so staff can tell who is coming and who is going, and we can have a bit of queuing in that space when it's hot outside, so you can stand in the shade rather than just standing outside in the heat. But the basic idea is you'll come into the exact same door that's there now, you go through the line, check in, and then move into the pool, locker rooms in the pool. And then coming out, there's a clear way to exit and then out again. And that's one of the things staff really wanted. They wanted more clarity as to who was coming and who was going. Other than that check-in desk, we're refinishing the floor and some new paint. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to try to provide a little bit of air conditioning. Right now, there is a bit of cooling in this fitness area in the Anderson building. We're going to tap into that and provide a little cool air coming in here. It's not going to be perfect. It's not its own system, but it'll be better than what it is now, because you can imagine it's a glass box. It gets quite hot. And if we're going to have staff there all summer, we need to provide something. So that takes care of the link. Now, moving on to the Anderson building, this is a little bit of a fun story. We've got a lot of people who use this in many different ways, and it has many, many lives. As you know, it was the original Parks and Rec offices. And if you go in today, you'll see where that was. You can see that there was a check-in desk right here and an open area where admin was. And so basically what we tried to do with this is we tried to create a little bit more usability out of the spaces that are there. So let's start with the fitness room. It's really actually fairly functional as it is. What we decided to do was redo the flooring, redo a little bit of storage, maybe remove the ceiling and redo the lighting so we can do more activities and not be so limited. But for the most part, it's a fairly functional space. All the mechanical spaces here will remain the same. We're not changing the mechanical systems in this particular project. The major move we're doing is in the middle of the building, in the lobby area. If you're familiar with the building, you'll know there are 2 outdated restrooms right in the smack middle of the building. Our proposal is to remove those restrooms and replace them with one ADA accessible restroom, which you'll see right here. And in doing so, what we'll do is we'll actually open up this lobby. Right now, if you're waiting for the next event to happen in the gym, or if there's a group of people who are leaving and coming, there's nowhere for them to stand. They actually have to stand pretty much in the court because there's no space in this hallway for them. So this provides a little bit of queuing space, a little bit of waiting space, a little bit of social space, if you will, before and after different events are going on. There's also a need for some babysitting sometimes by some of the groups. It provides an area for them to do that potentially. In any case, it opens up this into a true lobby space without really sacrificing any program area. The multi-purpose room is a new idea that came out of our discussions. That's the old admin area. So the idea is if we can wall that in and make a useful space out of it, we can actually do all sorts of different things, everything from program spaces to maybe using it as a babysitting space when it needs to overflow spaces when there's things going on at the pool even, or even classrooms and things like that associated with the pool. The storage area that's here right now will remain essentially unchanged. We're reorganizing it to make it a little more efficient, but effectively it's a usable space. We're going to leave it alone. And then finally, the gym area. Our plan for that is, first of all, to stop the roof from leaking. So right now, especially after that last hailstorm, it was quite a mess. And so it's getting a new roof, and we're removing those skylights. Now, the skylights in a metal building are always a challenge because a metal building flexes with the wind, it flexes with temperature. It's very difficult to get things that are rigid like skylights to do well in a moving building. And so our proposal is to not put skylights in, but as you see when we show you the elevations, we're suggesting that we put windows around the high side of the gym to get natural light in, but not impede play. The flooring will get replaced. We'll do some restriping. And we'll do some new lighting throughout the entire facility. I should have mentioned that. But effectively, it's going to be a large multi-purpose space, and a lot of the same activities that happen now will continue, and potentially there'll be opportunities for more. So it's more of a finish and lighting and window upgrade in the gym itself. One of our hopes is to add some large fans that will circulate in the ceiling. The purpose of those is to mix the air a little bit better, to get airflow to happen a little more nicely in there. However, we're not upgrading or changing the main mechanical system. So we've got a couple lists in your package of exactly what we're doing with the pool, bathhouse, the link, and the Anderson building. I went through most of these. If you have any questions on those, let me know. But we thought we would make a list for you, just so it's really clear what's in and what maybe not in each of these projects. Of course, the one with the Anderson building seems to be the longest one. The truth is, a lot of those are more finish related. So here's a picture of the Anderson building as you would approach it. You can see the basic shape of the building is the same. We're not changing that. However, there are a few things that we can do, and one of the main objectives is we're trying to get this building that really feels like 3 different buildings to feel more cohesive, to feel like it's the same. And so what we've done is we've worked with the planning department. We asked them if we could, for economical reasons, could we replace the metal siding that's on the Anderson building with different metal siding. And they agreed, as long as we use one with an architectural profile, so it's a little more interesting. It would have more depth and more shade and shadow. And so that's what we're proposing. We'll have a brighter color, a more rich kind of color. You can see the windows that we're suggesting on the upper portions of it, and then a strong base. Right now, if you walk around the building, you'll see that the snow falls and the snow shovels bang into the sides, and it's a tough situation. So we're going to reinforce the base of the whole building so that it holds up better over time. Now, one thing I will point out is that this is the main drop-off and parking lot area, and you'll see that there's a window down low. Our thought with that is to not actually use a window, but use a garage door, a very large garage door that, hopefully, one of the things we heard was that it needs to be festival friendly, whatever we do. Right now, there's an art show that happens during the Carnation Festival. If there is a way in which we can open this building up and have it be more of an indoor and outdoor experience so events can flow in and out, because right now people go through these doors or they go through around. It's not very cohesive to doing something that's more shared within the park. So that's the idea with that with that big garage door. Otherwise, we're using paint as our friend to sort of blend all the other spaces together. We're going to upgrade some signage, new roofs all around, and we've even suggested that on some of the more blank buildings, we might do some architectural screens to give it a little bit more interest. They won't be climbable or anything like that, but it's really just to sort of make a more fun and cohesive look to the entire facility. In terms of the entryway, this is just a quick little graphic. Our intent with this is not to spend a lot of money on the front, but to provide maybe some ideas of shade and some places to sit. When we get to the pool side of things, you can see this is the guard room that I was mentioning. So it would be built out of concrete block, just like the rest of the building, but it would be painted more of that red color to match with the other side of the building and to signal it is a place where lifeguards are. And then with the pool entrances, we thought we could make that kind of fun and use the color to identify the different areas of men's, women's, and family restrooms. And use that architectural screen, maybe even look like barn doors to connect with that idea of the barn. Another photo. Now, money. So in a building like this, which is really a pure renovation, it's a bit of a guessing game to figure out what's inside those walls and what it'll cost. So our strategy for coming up with a number is that we know we have a really pretty good sense of what it would cost if we built it new. We have a lot of projects that are going on now, and so we have a good database of what that is. Since we're not building new and we actually have some that we're working with, we went through each of the space, and that's what this detailed list is meant to represent, and we try to decide, is this a major renovation or is this a minor renovation? If it was a major renovation, it got more costs associated with it. Not the full cost, but more cost, and of course a minor. And so we did a ratioed kind of approach for every single space to come up with the overall idea of cost. The other thing is that we knew that there was going to be some inflation. And so you can see up in the upper left there, we assumed a 9% inflation to get to the midpoint of construction. Why the midpoint of construction and not the bid date? Because when contractors bid, they have to themselves project to the midpoint of construction because some of the things they won't be buying until halfway through the project. And so we have to account for some of that. So our project is coming in right around $3 million. And it includes the hard costs, which are all those bricks and mortar type of costs, and then all of the soft costs as well. You can see there's a detailed list here in terms of design fees and planning fees, testing fees, all those sorts of things. We tried to come up with a line item for everything. In addition, there's the contingencies for the unknowns, as well as the escalation. So it often comes up, since this has been priced separately from the park, what is going to be related to the site versus the building. And so we've included this just to know that there's a lot of things in here are actually in Paul's budget, so there's not duplication. Okay, so since this is a bit of a guessing game as to figure out what things cost, we worked with the public and the staff to say, gosh, if we have to dial this back a little bit and we had to take things away from the project, what are the priority? So what's our plan, basically, if we have to do that? And so here's a list of the top priorities. So these are the things that we must do in order. So the first, we have to do the bathhouse. Then we need to improve that link, because that whole indoor going in and out situation needs to be improved. Then we work on the gym. Then we get lighting throughout. Then we do the exterior improvements, and that's the order with which we spend our money. Now, if the costs exceed the projections, what would we take away? First, we'd remove the windows in the gymnasium. Then we'd rearrange the bathrooms in the Anderson building, meaning that we would leave the ones that are here alone and do that later. Third, we would not do the fitness room, we would not do the lobby, and then we would not do the admin area. So we have a logical plan. These things can all be added later if necessary. Now, if we go the other way, should we get a favorable bidding environment, what would we add? Well, we remodel the outdoor entrance plaza. We do a more robust shade structure and seating out here, shade trees and that sort of thing. Next, we'd add outdoor screening of the exterior walls of the bathhouse. What does that mean? Well, right now, this is all glass. If you look through this space, you'll see that this part of the pool area is full of pool equipment that's not being used. It's a bit of a storage area. And so the theory is, if we have a little bit extra money, we're going to actually take a little bit of space from Parks and Forestry. They've donated a little bit of area, at least they say they have. And we're going to screen it off and put it back here. That way we can get that stuff out of the way, and it makes it a little bit more usable space and around the pavilion that's back there. And then finally, we'll extend, and I forgot, we'll add the screening elements I mentioned. You know, the little decorative screening elements. Obviously, they're not critical, but a nice touch. And that would be done if we had additional money. So schedule. We actually work from the end backward. So what are the absolutes that we have to do? That is, we have to get open. The pool and the building have to be open by Memorial Day. Has to. So we just work back from that. You'll notice that there's actually another date on here, 7/1, and that's because we actually can't get all the park work done, the plantings mainly, in May. We know that we have to give a little bit more warmth to the ground, let the ground unfreeze and that sort of thing before some of the grass and some of the plantings can happen. That can happen, but we want to get it done before the festival. So July is the date for the rest of the park. But basically, working backwards, you can see we need to start construction in September. To do that, we need to finish the drawings in July. To do that, we need to get started in February. And then we need to have all of our planning complete by the end of the year. And that's our schedule. Like to have questions.
First of all, Paul and Sam and Craig, I'm very impressed with the amount of planning, the suggestions, and then the possibilities, and then as well to include the public input and give them that inspiration. I feel as though you've done a very good job. I'm sure my council does as well. Now, one of them is leaving, but, oh, great idea. Thank you for that. Council, we've got a very big project we're looking at here. And this, as I get it, we are getting a consensus as to the preferred design. We will actually look at it at a council meeting for final approval next week?
Correct.
Next week, good. Ms. Davis?
So I have just a few questions, some about the outreach, some about some of the things that Mr. Orcutt brought up. I know I initially had also said something about the baseball field because I I think we've always known Anderson Park to have that baseball field, and I think also growing up being a softball player, of course, we didn't play on that field because, as you had said, Joyce, it's a baseball field, not a softball field. But, you know, we had the fields at Marshall. So I guess I would like a little bit more input on the use of that. But the other comment I want to ask about before we go into that is, I do appreciate the outreach that was done, but it does seem that the outreach was done to specific sources. I mean, I know you always can send stuff out and say, please come to the meeting, please come to the meeting, and then by the time a decision's made, people are like, I didn't know about the meeting. But I think like some of the pop-up outreaches, like one of the ones was during a concert. So of course, you're probably going to get more concert goers saying, yeah, let's have more stages and we can have several dueling bands and a great festival type of thing. So you're going to get that kind of crowd that at that pop-up activity that's going to be supporting that kind of function. And same with if the pop-up was during some of the soccer practices and that type of thing. Yeah, let's, you know, boy, it would be a nice time that we'd have some area over here to warm up and then play, you know, play our sports there. So I guess my question would be, because my hope is that we reached out to all of the users. And so like the folks that did use the kind of adult baseball field, you know, was there outreach to them, you know, a special invitation to make sure that they were going? So that's one of my questions. I think my other question is again, I probably have a lot of old school viewpoint because I grew up with that baseball field being there, seeing baseball being played there. But I also feel like it would be nice for all of our parks to have that diversity. You know, like for instance, Discovery Park has like a skateboard, you know, ramp, and you can ride your bikes in that area and that type of thing. So is that necessary to be at all parks? I mean, Paramount Park, I drive by a lot of times. It's actually over by Mr. Orca's house. And a lot of times that's empty. So are we utilizing that to the most we can, you know, for the soccer, you know, crowd or users? So I guess my thought is I'd love all of our parks to meet everybody's needs, and I don't want all of our parks to start looking the same, that we have, you know, the new kids kind of play grounds, and that they all have some kind of bike and skateboard tunnels or whatever you call them, you know. So I guess, what are your thoughts? I know I asked you a bunch of questions, but one, mostly outreach to those people that use those baseball fields, and then two, if those baseball fields aren't going to be there, what's an option? And then three, do we run the risk of having a lot of our parks have the same facilities, and should we still keep that kind of diversity within our parks?
Let's see if I can answer them. I tried to make some notes. So yes, really this specific outreach occurred in June to individuals that were identified as park users, including baseball, soccer, swim team that use the outdoor pool. And those were the focus groups, the festival organizers, Kite Flight organizer, Carnation Festival, Jazzercise. So all of the user groups, we worked very hard to recruit into these focus groups, and we had fairly good attendance. We did have the president of the Wheat Ridge Area Boys Baseball Association attend, and this is just a point of clarification. They don't use the baseball field, they use softball fields, and I know that seems counterintuitive, but softball fields give them more flexibility. So the individuals that are using the baseball field currently are the third level high school team when they need it, because the high school has a field behind Everett Middle School, a baseball field. And then the senior men's league, 35 and over. They rent the field. So that is the main user of the field. And they do play there pretty much March through fall in the evening. And they, of course, enjoy